Today we're going to do something a little different than the typical preamp comparisons that we've been doing. I've been getting a lot of questions from folks, particularly after the Spector Icon bass came out, asking how does the LHZ preamp sound in the Spector Icon. Unfortunately, I don't have a Spector Icon to play around with, but it really got me thinking that perhaps it's time to do a comparison video showing how different pickups sound with the LHZ preamp. The bass I'm using is a mid-2000s era Rebop model, and it's currently set up with the EMG active pickups, the LHZ preamp, and using a blend and volume control. So the pickups I'm using for this comparison today are a set of EMG active PJs. These are soap bar format for 5-string bass. So it's a 40 P5 and 40J pickup. Compared to that are a set of Aguilar pickups that were taken out of a Spector Icon. And then lastly, I have a set of EMG HZ pickups, and those were the original pickups that were shipped with the Rebop when I originally purchased it. So let's get that on the bench. We'll open up that control cavity, disconnect the pickup wires from the blend control, and pull those aside so they can pull cleanly out. Then we'll flip it over. I don't like to remove the strings as I'm going to be doing this several times, so what I'm going to do is just loosen up the strings so there's enough clearance above both pickups that I can simply lift them out of the bass and swap them out. Before I remove the pickups though, I do want to measure where they're currently set at. So I'm going to measure the height from the body on the low string and the high string side for both the bridge and neck pickups, so I know exactly where they're set. That way, when I put the new pickups in, I can set those at the same position, so we're close to apples as we can get doing our comparison. Removing the EMG pickups is a little tricky. I have a very small wiring cavity in there, so I'm going to pull out that red power wire first, and then that'll give me enough clearance to pull out the other connector that has the 2-pin connector on the other end. While the Aguilar pickups are the same physical length and width as the EMG pickups, they do have a different height. So what I'm going to do is swap out the foam pads that are underneath the pickups so I have one that's a little bit more appropriate for the Aguilars. Feeding those cables back through, I'll go ahead and secure the pickups and set them to the same heights, and then we'll flip this back over. The EMGs are active pickups, so I have a blend control that's a 25K blend control for active pickups. The Aguilar pickups are passive humbuckers, so we need a different blend control. So I'm going to use our 100K active blend model for this one. So I'll swap those out and connect the pickups to the blend control and close up the cavity. The pickup replacement for the EMG HZs follows a very similar process. We'll open up the control cavity, disconnect the blend control, get the pickup wires ready to pull through, flip it over, loosen up the string so there's enough clearance, remove those pickups, and then we're going to feed the EMG HZ pickups in there and set those to the same height that the original pickups were set. Flipping back over once again, we'll hook these up to the blend control and close up the cavity and get the bass tuned up for our audio comparison. So let's talk about the pickup configurations and audio tests that we're going to do. First up will be the EMG PJ set, and this is single coil pickups, your traditional PJ configuration. The Aguilar pickups are passive humbuckers, as are the EMG HZ pickups. So it'll be interesting to hear what kind of differences we hear between those two humbuckers. I'm expecting to hear a large difference between the EMG PJ setup and the humbuckers, and less of a difference between the two humbuckers. We have 3 samples we're listening to. The first is me playing to a live room recording of my old band. That's my brother Vance on the drums and Kevin Bowling on guitar. Nothing fancy here, but just a decent bass riff that we can listen to the 3 pickups back to back. After that, we'll just have 2 isolated samples. One is just hard picking on the E string between the G and the E. The second piece is playing with fingers, and that illustrates some soft playing, some moderate playing, a little bit of tapping, and a little bit of slapping, so we can kind of hear some of that transient response. As we listen to these audio samples, these are direct from the bass with the bass and treble control boosted 100%. This is kind of where the LHZ and HazLab sound comes from, so I thought that would be a good place to do a comparison from. There's no amp sim or anything else. This is just the direct bass output. What comes out of the bass is what you are hearing. So let's listen to the samples. So what did I take away from this? Huge difference between the single coil PJ set and the humbuckers, as expected, particularly if you really listen closely to those sections where you're tapping and there's string popping or the attack of the pick on there. That really comes through very strong on those single coil pickups. On the humbuckers, that attack is a little bit more muted. It's there, but it's not in your face like it was, but they have a nice thick full tone. I was a bit surprised at how similar the Aguilar and the HZ pickups were. There is a different profile on those. You can, if you listen closely and put on your headphones, you can hear that there is a different EQ profile on those, but they're similar enough that once you put them through an amp, I don't know how much difference you would actually be able to hear in them. Both great pickups. And it's interesting to note that there's very little volume difference between the EMG and the other two pickups. They all have about the same output level, so if there is a relative difference in output volumes, you'll hear that in this comparison. Ultimately, there is no right or wrong pickup. It really depends on what you are playing, what your genre is, what your playing style is. I hope this answers some questions around how different pickups work with the LHZ. Obviously, there's more pickups out there than we can test, but I think this sets a good idea of what the differences are, particularly between single coil and humbuckers. That's it for today. Till next time.